everyone's time, so we'll get going and we'll just go from there. So good evening, my name is Susan Santos. I'm with a company called Focus Group. We're located in Medford, Massachusetts. We actually specialize in developing public involvement and community involvement plans. We work for DEP on a number of sites throughout the state. We work nationwide. We work for citizen groups, and we also work on behalf of companies. And we were asked to support the public involvement plan for the H-foot road residential area. So let me tell you, you all got an agenda. I'll tell you a little bit about tonight and what we'll do tonight, and then we'll start. So tonight's a public meeting specifically to go through the public involvement plan. And you'll hear about that. There was a petition that was submitted. As a result, this became designated as what was referred to as a public involvement plan site. We'll hear more about that. We've developed now a draft public involvement plan. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to go through that plan with you, kind of give you this is what the sections are and what you can expect, and then to take your comments and feedback tonight. And actually, there'll be a possibility of giving comments all the way through June 28th. And again, we'll share this information with you more. So it's a first opportunity, a formal opportunity for you to have some input into what are the best ways for you to get information and to be involved. You have an agenda, a little bit about what we're going to do. We're going to have a presentation by Jeffrey Arps. He's the licensed site professional for the site. He's going to talk about the site investigation and kind of site history activities. And again, that information is also contained in the public involvement plan. Michael Morgan from Focus Group is going to talk about the community interviews that were conducted to support developing the plan. Then Anne Chabot is going to talk about, okay, what is the plan and what have we included in it, and tell you kind of what to look for as you're reviewing it. There are copies of the plan in the back if you haven't taken one and you want a hard copy. We have some here. It's also available in a couple other different ways. And then Tracy Markham is going to talk about the water line and the recent administrative order on consent, and she'll speak about that and what's to be expected with that. And then we're going to open it up for questions and comments on the public involvement plan. Just a couple of things to kind of get us all on the same page. So this is about the public involvement plan. It's about the H-foot road residential area. So I'm going to make sure, my job is to make sure that that's kind of how we keep the focus of this discussion this evening. So people may have questions about a whole bunch of other things, but that's really our focus tonight. Also, I'll ask, out of respect for your neighbors, if you have a question or a comment, to kind of make that, and then give other people an opportunity to make their comments or questions as well. If you do have a question, I'd ask that you give us your name and where you live. Again, part of that's because part of what we're also going to be doing is taking down your comments and questions, and then we'll be responding to those as we prepare a final plan. So that's why we're asking you for your name and kind of to speak. If you can speak loudly like I am, or we have a mic, but if you can speak loudly, that's just so that Tricia Sullivan, when she's typing things up, can actually hear what's being said, so we make sure we record it as accurately as possible. So we have a couple of presentations. When we're giving the presentation, there's really something that you didn't understand or that's unclear, and you feel like you really just need to ask then yes, we'll take a couple of questions, but it would be better if we could go through the presentations and then open it up to leave that time for comment. We've got 2 hours, we have until 8 p.m., and again, there's an opportunity to comment additionally in writing or by email until June 28th. So that's pretty much the flow of the meeting. Is there any quick question for me on the flow of the meeting? Okay, great. I feel like I'm back in my classroom again, so I've got all my people in the back here. Okay, so with that, yes, I'm sorry, thank you, Tracy. So we do have somebody here who's able to translate. Rodrigo, if you could, in Spanish, please tell if anyone needs that translation.
Si alguien necesita que le traduzca, me deja saber.
Nada. Okay.
Thanks, Rodrigo.
Thank you. Hasta luego.
Thank you for coming.
But I just want to say that was part of, as we reviewed the community demographics, we wanted to respect the fact that there is a Spanish-speaking community, and so if there are folks who are going to need information in that way or will come to a meeting, it's our intent to make sure that they also are able to access the information. That was the intent of having Rodrigo here as well. Anything else? Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to ask Jeffrey Arp, who again is a licensed site professional for the site. He's going to talk about the site investigation and site history, and we'll kind of set the context.
Good evening, everyone. A lot of familiar faces. I know most of you have seen this or some version of this before. So I'm Jeff Arps and Ty Bob. I'm the LSP for the site, the H-foot road site. We'll be talking tonight about The site discovery, immediate response actions that are ongoing, contaminants of concern, extensive contamination, how we determine that, and then the current status of the IRA, and then the phase 1 and phase 2, and the scope of work that we go for that.
Did everyone hear Jeff okay? No. So Jeff, you gotta use the soccer voice with Jeff.
Sorry. Okay, so for the site discovery, I'll try my best to stay out of your way. For site discovery, the landfill operates under a permit from Mass DEP, and as part of that permit, they're required to sample drinking water wells within a half-mile of the landfill. So the way it's set up, it's the triennial program, so 1/3 of the houses are sampled every year, and then so all of the houses get covered over a 3-year period. So in 2015, when the sampling was done, there were some detections on Eachville Road, 4-dioxane and 5 other chlorinated VOCs. That notification was made to Mass DEP, and Mass DEP at that point made the determination to move the issue out of the solid waste program where the water sampling was done into the mass contingency plan process, which is the Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup. So it's a different group within DEP that handles that. So upon notification, that prompts what's called an immediate response action, or IRA. It's loaded with acronyms. I will do my best not to use them, but they just come out sometimes. It's part of our vernacular. So the IRA activities involved establishing a 500-foot radius around the houses that had the detections, and then we had to sample all the houses within that radius, and then we kept moving out to make sure that we got all the houses that were impacted. We understood the magnitude of the problem. So there were 3 additional radii that we did. Bottled water was provided to houses that had detections, and there were additional houses, even those that didn't have detections, some that were also provided with bottled water. We were required to go to a quarterly sampling program where we had to sample houses within that area every quarter. And then we had an obligation to notify Mass DEP, the individual property owner, the boards of health for Charlton and Southbridge of any detections. Oh, and then we had to do there was subsurface investigation work to evaluate whether the landfill was in fact the source of the contamination. Okay. So this is the first radius that we had to do. Again, that's 500 feet out from the houses that had detections. And so we sampled all the houses within that radius. And we had a second radius, then a third, and then the fourth. So by the time we had sampled all those homes, we got to a point where there weren't any more new detections. So again, you can see the landfills over here, and the houses along Eachville Road over there. So the contaminants that were detected, there were 5 chlorinated volatile organic compounds, CVOCs, trichloroethylene, cis-1,2-dichloroethylene, 1,1-dichloroethene, 1,1-dichloroethane, and chlorobenzene. Now, in addition to that was also 1,4-dioxane, which you all know about. So those 6 compounds were detected in almost all the houses along there. So those became what we call the contaminants of concern, or the COCs. So then the houses that have that area, that becomes our disposal site. So the site boundary is shown here on the map, and you can see the landfills. So the chlorinated VOCs that we detected, again, trichloroethylene is a common degreaser. It was used, historically primarily for metal fabrication, degreasing of machine parts, that kind of thing. The cis-1,2-DCE, 1,1-DCE, and the 1,1-DCA are degradation products. So as the TCE undergoes natural degradation in the environment, these products are created. Basically, trichloroethylene has 3 chlorines, and the rest of these have 2 chlorines. So as the chlorine comes off, that's how the new products are formed. The other compound, chlorobenzene, had a similar use to TCE, so it was also a chlorinated solvent that was used historically. So those 5 compounds, they have been detected sporadically at the landfill, but we've never had a single instance where they've been all detected together like they are on Eachville Road. So you see those same compounds in all the houses on H-Foot Road. 1,4-dioxane is a little bit different. It's not a chlorinated VOC, but it was used historically as a stabilizer in solvents. It has a very high solubility, so it dissolves in the groundwater, and pretty much where the groundwater goes, the 1,4-dioxane will follow. The other compounds they're less mobile. They also dissolve in groundwater, but they don't move quite as fast as the 1,4-dioxane will. Massachusetts established a drinking water guideline. It's not a full standard yet. The guideline is 0.3 parts per billion. And the analytical method for that is an EPA method 522, which is specific to 1,4-dioxane. Now, we had a lot of questions when this first started about J values and reporting limits and method detection limits. So we put this graphic up to help kind of explain that. Maybe visually it's a little easier to understand. So the squiggly line is what we would see the output from a gas chromatograph, and then the peaks would indicate different compounds. This isn't anything specific, this is just for illustration purposes. So you have the method detection limit, which is the lower line here. And then the reporting limit is the higher line up here. So the area in between those two is where you see the J. So you have the method detection limit, that's kind of as low as the instrument can actually see. And then you have the reporting limit, which is the limit that that's reported with certainty, and it's something that can be duplicated. And down here you're kind of in the noise, and up here in between there's something there, but we can't be certain what it is. So that's called an estimated value, and DP actually doesn't even consider that to be an actual detection. So it's informative. We do additional QA/QC on it. We have duplicate samples we run to keep an eye on it. So this, try not to be in your way here. So this is H-Foot Road, and what you're seeing here are the TCE concentrations that were detected in the houses along H-Foot Road. Now this line, the outside line, is the non-detect line. That's the line that marks the 0. So all of these houses over here do not have TCE. The landfill is over here. So what you see is a non-detect line, and then you have the other lines, these little lines here and down here are the 1 part per billion marks. So, basically you can see that the contamination is pretty much defined to the north, to the south, and to the west. The area, to the east, that's not been defined yet. But, the landfill's over here, so that's our primary concern. This is a similar map, but this is the 1,4-dioxane concentrations. And again, you see almost the same, the same pattern. You have this outer line, non-detect. That's right here is the only location up there above the 1. So in 2016, throughout 2016, there was a fair amount of subsurface work that was done. There were bedrock wells drilled. There was a lot of geophysical evaluation of new bedrock holes, existing bedrock wells. And there's monitoring, constant ongoing monitoring of the water level in those wells. And we did what we call packer testing, which is isolating different fractures, which allows us to sample those specific fractures. Because if you get a result from a well, you don't really know exactly where's that water coming from. So by packering, you basically inflate ladders in the borehole and isolates that fracture, so we can sample the individual fractures to find out where the contamination is coming from. So what we found was that the fractures are oriented in a northeast-southwest direction, but they dip to the northwest. So that's the feature that dictates the groundwater flow direction. So what we found was in overburden at the landfill, there's no overburden on H-Foot Road because the bedrock is so shallow, so there's very little dirt. So what we found is that the overburden and the bedrock, all of the groundwater flows to the northwest. And I guess one of the most important things is samples have been collected from the landfill for a long time. We've been sampling on H-Foot Road. The triennial program has been going on for quite a while. This intense sampling that we've been doing has just been for the last couple of years. And so the concentrations that we're seeing at the landfill are, sporadic detections. They're very low, and they're not what we would consider source concentrations. When you have a significant release, you think of a source as being, hundreds of ppb or thousands of ppb or even in the ppm range. So we're not seeing those kinds of concentrations.
Jeff, could you just go back? I think you skipped over.
Oop.
Yeah. The last line?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so what we're seeing at the landfill, that signature, those 6 VOCs that we see on H Foot Road, we don't see at the landfill. We don't see it in individual wells at the landfill. And again, while those specific compounds have been detected sporadically over time, it's not indicative of a major groundwater problem because you don't see those together like that. And again, you see it, and then the next time we sample, it's gone. So they're just sporadic detections, and they're not source concentrations, and the fingerprints just don't match. So this is the groundwater flow diagram. This is based on the groundwater elevations that were measured in May 2017. That's just the depth of groundwater. And you can see, as I mentioned, there's no overburden up on H Foot Road. So we're just talking about the landfill here. And you can see it goes to the northwest. This diagram is in the bedrock. And so you can see now those contours do extend up into H Foot Road because we've been monitoring bedrock groundwater depths on H Foot Road. And again, the contours are not quite exactly the same, but they're definitely, they don't flow from the landfill to H Foot Road, they flow the other way. So H Foot Road is up gradient of the landfill. Now last summer, when the drought was happening, we had some concentration increases in some of the wells. We saw houses that hadn't had detections started to have detections. And so, DEP was concerned. At that point, the monitoring program changed from a quarterly sampling program to a monthly sampling program. And that's been, ever since September 2016, we've been sampling all the houses monthly. So most of you, I think, are in that boat. We've been visiting you regularly. Now, the elevation monitoring and the groundwater data, the analytical data, all indicate that things have gotten back to normal. We've certainly had enough rain that the aquifers have been restored to the levels that they were at. So, the conditions that drove that monthly sampling have abated. Now we're back to, the monthly sampling continues, but the conditions have significantly improved. So the IRA activities are ongoing. We're still sampling monthly. Bottled water is still being provided. We installed treatment systems in 10 homes on H Foot Road. Those are point of entry treatment systems, or POET systems they're called. They consist of 2 granular activated carbon vessels in series, so the water flows through the first vessel, through the second vessel, before you drink it. And then when the sampling, we take a sample before the unit so we know what's going in. We take a sample between to make sure the first vessel is catching everything. And then obviously the effluent, what comes out of your faucet. We sample all 3 of those. So we've had a handful of instances where the first vessel is breaking through with 1,4-dioxane, but that's been 9 to 13, 14 months of service life. So we're pretty confident it's working really well. There's a lot of concern up front because the 1,4-dioxane is not supposed to be treated by carbon, but the data that we have shows that it is in fact working very well. Currently, the monitoring program consists of about 40 homes on a monthly basis, and then for the quarterly sampling that we do, it includes an additional 10 homes. This is a graphic that just kind of puts all that onto a map. So these are the houses. They show who's getting bottled water, who has a POET system, who's sampled monthly, and who's sampled quarterly. So kind of running in parallel with the IRA, the immediate response action is just kind of a constant thing that's required until the IRA condition is abated. But in the background, the mass contingency plan also requires It has a phase, phases 1 through 5. So from the time the notification is made, there's a 1-year anniversary that requires a phase 1 report. So there was no specific work that was done for the phase 1. The IRA work was just so all-inclusive that, the phase 1 was really just kind of a summary of all the IRA activities that had happened. In addition, part of the phase 1 process is a tier classification process. So the MCP, Mass Contingency Plan, that governs all this, ranks sites as tier 1 or tier 2. Tier 2 sites are lower priority, your typical gas spills, that kind of thing. Tier 1 sites are a higher priority, and when you have drinking water wells that are impacted, you're automatically tier 1. So this site is tier 1. The last part is the phase 2 scope of work. So phase 2 is where you do additional subsurface investigation, but again, a lot of that was ongoing as part of the IRA. But we did include a phase 2 scope of work, which is designed to answer some of the questions that DEP had raised, when their opinion that the landfill could be the source. So that included some additional drilling, more wells, doing additional, the new bedrock wells that are put in, do the geophysical evaluation, look at the fractures, look at the fracture patterns, and get a handle on, just basically improve the groundwater monitoring network so we know what's going on. And as most of you probably heard, it was an administrative consent order that was negotiated with the towns of Charlton, Southbridge, SRDP, and Mass DEP. As part of that, that's the water line that's going to be installed on each one. So in conclusions, the monthly sampling continues. Bottled water continues to be provided. The town of Southbridge is responsible for the water line. That process is underway, so we can get that going. And again, there's been a lot of work done, a lot of geophysical evaluation, a lot of looking at groundwater flow directions and fractures, and we have not found anything that indicates that the landfill is the source. So the data continue to support that the landfill is not the source. That's the report.
Great, thank you, Jack. So I'm going to take a moment to bring up the other set of slides, and then I'll have Michael Morgan talk about the public involvement plan, specifically the interviews that were conducted. And again, if you can't hear anyone, just put your hand up or something like that. Don't be shy. It's important to hear. Great. Michael.
As Susan said earlier, the Department of Environmental Protection, maybe right here, sorry, requires a public involvement plan. How do you have a public involvement plan? You need public involvement. The best way to have that is to interview people, talk to people, listen to people. It's a very important component of the plan. It's required. In fact, the Mass Department of Environmental Protection includes a model plan as guidance. That plan has very carefully structured a lot of questions that need to be asked about awareness of the site, the way people get their information, the way people would like to get their information about the site. What we did is we put together an interview guide, which you will find in our draft public involvement plan. It includes all of those questions and also some questions that we localized. We conducted a total of 17 interviews with people in the community. We spoke with a wide range of people. We spoke with petitioners. We see some tonight. Nice to see you here. We spoke with other people from Charlton, from Southbridge, and from Sturbridge. We spoke with public health and safety officials. We spoke with town officials and town employees. Talked to as many people as we could. We did the interviews in early May. We did most of them in person. We did some of them on the phone, but the key was to see as many people face to face as possible. We did some of the interviews. I had a chance to do them with Tracy Markham from SRDP, and Nikki Roy's here tonight too from SRDP. And we did some at the SRDP trailer offices. We did some in people's workplaces. Did them at times that were convenient to the folks. We appreciate everybody who took part in them. Interviews lasted anywhere from an average 30 up to 45 minutes. Some cases they were an hour. Our main job was to listen. So if people wanted to talk more, we listened. People gave us a lot of insight, asked a lot of questions. Some of the questions that we asked, and in turn people amplified on and asked us about, were access to site information, vehicles for getting information, how they like to get information, and how often did they want to get it, preferences regarding types of meetings, large, small, frequency of the meetings, and how people would like to be involved in public involvement in the community. So we talked about those things. We asked questions, and people in turn asked us questions about nature and extent of contamination. We wanted to know what was the cause. Everybody was aware of the presence of 1,4-dioxane in some residential wells, some living the experience. So people wanted to know what was the cause. What is happening now? Some of the things that Jeffrey Ox just explained to you. Were there other chemicals involved in addition to 1,4-dioxane, as Jeff just pointed out? What were the testing methods and results for the testing private wells? We talked about the routes of exposures, health issues. People asked about the possible spread of contamination. They asked about health risks to children and to animals. They wanted to know if there was 1,4-dioxane in the retention pond. And also people talked about the water line. Pretty much everybody was aware that a water line was going to be installed. People wanted to know more specifics, the location of it, what was involved in it. We talked about design. You'll hear more about that tonight from Tracy Markham. The design of the water line, time frame for installing it, when is it actually going to be operational. In addition, while it wasn't part of our public involvement plan, people did have questions about landfill operations. First slide here is kind of an appetizer. My colleague Ann Chabot is going to go into detail about components of the plan. Some of them you'll find dispersed in the plan, a lot of information on opportunities for public involvement, meetings, email as a vehicle, social media, and the information repositories at Charlton Library. And we have Ann Chabot here.
Great, thanks, Michael. So we'll turn this over to Ann. And so again, I want to thank you all who did participate in the interviews, because that's really the heart and soul of the public involvement grant process, which is really asking the community questions and then getting their input. So, Ann.
Thank you. So what is a public involvement plan? You can think of it as a roadmap of how we're going to share information with the public about site activities and how the public can be involved and have input into the plans about those site activities. As many of you know, in February, some of the community members from Southbridge and Charlton presented SRDP in the town of Southbridge with a signed petition. And SRDP in April responded to them and formally designated the H-foot road residential area as a public involvement plan. So how is the public involvement plan prepared? There are three main building blocks. The first, as Michael mentioned, were the community interviews, and those played a central role in putting together the plan. The second is the Massachusetts contingency plan regulations, and these regs specify how a public involvement plan is to be carried out. The third is the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection has a guide and a model that all plans have to follow. So there are copies on the back if you want to grab one on the way out. But I want to now talk about some of the sections and the types of information that are involved in the draft. First is the introduction, and this gives a brief overview of the site, the laws and the regulations, and who's involved in the public involvement plan process. The site background section, this describes the location and the features of the site, the current activities, and it also talks about the site history. This section also focuses on the environmental investigations, which Jen talked in length about, And it gives a recap of the public involvement activities that SRDP has been involved in to date. And you can see the list of those activities in Table 1 that's in the appendix of the plan. Section 3 addresses the public concerns. In broad strokes, this section lists the phases and the notification requirements of any response action. This is also the section that summarizes how the community interviews were carried out, much of what Michael just told you about. Now, Section 4 talks about the planned public involvement activities, and I want to hold that for right now, and I'm going to come back to that and talk more about it in detail. Section 5 is about the responsibility for implementing a public involvement plan, and that explains the role that SRDP in the town of Southbridge will play, as well as what Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, their role in this process and their oversight. And the last section explains how a public involvement plan can be updated if necessary. So I want to come back to Section 4 and the planned public involvement activities. So there are 2 types of communication that must be part of a public involvement plan, according to the MCP regulations. The first is how to inform people. The second is how to solicit input, provide public input into the process. So how will SRDP make information available? First, with an information repository. We've set up an information repository here at the Charlton Public Library. It includes hard copies of the site documents for people to review at your leisure. The library hours are listed actually in the plan. And Cheryl Hansen, the director here, has very generously offered to volunteer and help people if they need access to the documents and help. Next is the site mailing list, and we put together a list that is being used to announce upcoming meetings and the availability of new documents. It also will notify people about, will be used to notify people about the public comment periods. Many of you received a notice tonight about this meeting because you're already on the mailing list. And if you haven't already and you'd like to, we can have you sign up before you leave tonight. On the back table, we have a sign-up sheet. In addition to the site mailing list, we have a notification list. And this is a specific list that includes local officials and residents that will be notified in advance of any scheduled field work or site activity. So that's what's required to provide information. And let's look at what the MCP requires for involving the public. There's a public meeting like this one tonight, which is focusing on the draft public involvement plan. And other public meetings may be scheduled at certain milestones along the way. Well, just like tonight, any future public meeting will be scheduled at a central and convenient location. And SRDP will send out notices about the meeting at least 14 days in advance. Now, there are some documents related to the site activities that require a public comment period, like the one we have today with the draft public involvement plan. Now, a public comment period typically runs for 20 days, and it's an opportunity for people to provide input on the document before it's finalized. And finally, there's the response summary. This is a formal record of the comments that are received from the public and the responses to each comment before the document is finalized. Now, a schedule of these activities and others that I'll talk about in a minute are labeled Exhibit 2, and they're in the appendix of the draft plan. So the activities I've mentioned so far are what the MCP requires every public involvement plan to include. And as Michael just told you, we got a lot of feedback from the community interviews, and we learned from people that they had a number of suggestions and preferences for receiving information and for being involved in the process. Now, I'll quickly run through some of these, but you can read more about them in the draft plan. First, providing information. Most people that we interview interviewed agreed with setting up the information repository here at the Charlton Library. Some suggested Southbridge Library too. Now, while the library repository contains hard copies of all the site documents, people seemed interested in also having an electronic repository. Now, many people we talked to were aware that the Mass DEP has an online file viewer, but they suggested that a more user-friendly version would be helpful. So in the draft plan, you'll see that SRDP is considering options for establishing the electronic repository. Next are fact sheets. These are handouts, brief summaries that break down technical information into everyday language. We prepared one for tonight, which we handed to you when you signed in. And this gives an overview of the site and the public involvement process. Next are newspapers. Interviewees told us that they read the Worcester T&G and the local weeklies. And these are the papers that will be used to notify people about upcoming meetings and other news items. Also, some people interviewed said it would be good to have a local access cable. And here we are. So they'll be televising this and making it available for the community. Now, when we asked about people's website usage, most people didn't support the creation of a website for this project. As many of you know, SRDP has a website at www.southbridgelandfill.com. And by adding to that website, we can include news about the H-Foot Road residential area site and updates about the water line. And we talked about email. And when we asked them, they said that they would like to get emails. Now you can indicate that your is for emails on the sign-in sheet if you'd like. Again, more about all of these can be read about in the public involvement plan. Now let's look at the opportunities for more public involvement. Tonight we're having a formal public meeting. What we heard from community members was that they would like to have small group meetings and maybe prefer less formal gatherings. So for instance, instead of a public meeting, we could have a community information session, which is a type of meeting that features displays and exhibits and that talk about the project. These posters, if you will, they provide a kind of gathering spot where discussions can happen between the technical folks and people in the community, and it's a more relaxed setting. Now, other venues. People we interviewed suggested that there are other town events at which representatives from SRDP can talk with people and talk about the progress made, similar to how that they have been participating in the Board of Health meetings recently. And as more people are talking about social media, we're also looking into considering that. So again, more about this in the draft plan. So what are the next steps? We know most of you haven't had a chance to review the draft plan yet. We encourage you to do so. It's available in hard copy here at the Charlton Library and Information Repository. And obviously we have some additional copies for you tonight. And it's also online through the SRDP website and on the Mass Department of Environmental Protection's file viewer. Tonight we'll take notes on the comments that you have on the draft plan, but after this meeting, folks can provide input on the draft plan for 20 days. That's up until June 28th by submitting comments in writing to Jeffrey Arts, and information here or by email, and that's his email address. And as I mentioned before, SRDP will consider the comments that you have and provide a response summary before finalizing the public involvement plan.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Tracy Markham. Tracy's going to talk a little bit about that administrative consent order and the water line.
Does that mean for this? I think I've met just about everybody here in the room, but for those who haven't met met me, my name is Tracy Markham. I'm the site manager at the Southbridge landfill, and I've been at that facility for about 14 years now. So I just want to take everybody through a little bit of detail about the water line. I'm sure folks have a lot of questions maybe on a technical level, but Heather Blakely from the Southbridge DPW is here. Could probably do her best to answer some of your technical stuff. But remember, this water line is in the very beginning stages, so being able to answer absolute detail about design and construction, we're a little ahead of that right now. So there is a hard copy of the map here if you want to take a look at it later, and I'm not sure that this make it into the plan or not. I don't think that did. So we'll leave this here so folks can take a look at it after the slide is on. So what's on the map? What you'll see, there's three components that we really wanted to convey here. The blue line that you see, okay, first of all, this is the landfill. This is the scaling facility or the residential drop-off area that some of you may use on Saturdays. So the existing line runs down Commercial Drive to 169, where it does now exist running north and south on Route 169. So that's what's existing and is there as of now. So what we're talking about doing is adding to that line by adding two additional components to it. So what we see in red, which encompasses Eleanor Lane, the length of H-Foot Road, and then Berry Corner Road to the west and the east, comes down and meets at Route 169. So that would be entirely new construction. That would be done under the observation, guidance, whatever you want to call it, engineering of the town of Southbridge. So it's going to be their responsibility to put out a request for proposal, review those proposals, choose a contractor, go through design and construction. So the town of Southbridge will be doing that for everything that you see there in red. Then down at the bottom, which continues to run north and south on Route 169, there's a magenta or a pink line here. That represents a water line that was part of the town of Charlton's settlement with ExxonMobil for the issues that happened in Charlton. So this was something that was already realized and would be constructed. And I think that the most important part about this pink line is right here, right in this bottom corner of the map. That little square represents a pump station. So we all know water lines don't work off of gravity, they're pressure lines. So without this pump station, we would not be able to feed the supply through Eleanor Lane, H-Foot Road, and Berry Corner Road. So we talked a little bit, and Jeff touched on it, the administrative consent order that was signed to bring this water line to reality. So that was a cooperative effort between SRDP, the state of Massachusetts, the town of Charlton, and the town of Southbridge. So those four entities came together, brought their resources to the project. There was a commitment of $5 million from SRDP, a commitment of $5 million from the state of Massachusetts. So that is how the water line is going to be funded. So with the exception of the pink line here, which, as I said, is part of the town of Charlton agreement with ExxonMobil. So Southbridge won't have anything to do with that. That's a commitment on Charlton to make sure that this leg is built along with the pump station. And the administrative consent order also puts timeframes on that portion as well. So, that's about all I had to add to the water line discussion. You know, if you might have some technical questions when we get there, I think Heather might be able to help me out a bit. Great. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, so you've all been very patient. Really, now's an opportunity. If you had a specific question, maybe on something that somebody presented, again, the purpose of the meeting is to take comments on the public involvement plan. So that's, we really like to get your input on that, the things that we are proposing in ways to keep you informed, in ways to keep you involved. But if there is a specific technical question or a follow-up, we're happy to try to answer that as well. And just to clarify one thing on the response summary, what I will say is that what we'll do is we'll try to take categories of questions. So if there's categories, it may not be each and every individual's comment or question, but we try to categorize the types of comments we receive and then respond to them in that way. Any feedback on the draft plan? I know people didn't get a chance to review it yet. You will have until June 28th. Yes? Jeffrey, could you just stand up and give your name? And
Gus Stevens, I'm from Southbridge.
Gus Stevens from Southbridge.
Town Council. I think this is actually kind of what, because I noticed the maps that you guys showed are not in the plan. Can you add them?
Okay, so a comment to add the maps on those two plume maps and that. That's definitely.
And that map.
And the map there. So a comment, the comment is to please include those types of maps in the, when you finalize the public involvement plan. Okay? Yes, sir.
I'm John Foskey, also from Southbridge. And I first saw a presentation at the Southbridge Town Council meeting on analysis of the study that was conducted. A term that was used then was suite of, is it chemicals you use? Suite of chemicals?
Suite of contaminants.
Suite of contaminants. And since that time, I've tried to get access to the leachate reports. It stated that they weren't detected at the landfill, but the way I perceive it, I'm not an engineer, they weren't detected at the places in which they tested. And I found out that they didn't really go down to the same depths as the other wells. So I'm curious, I couldn't get access through request of the leachate. So I'm wondering if the leachate itself was analyzed, because I would be surprised if they weren't all in the leachate myself from making inquiries with engineers and others.
So let me make one general observation, and then I'll see if there's anything that Jeffrey can add. So again, the focus of the information that was presented tonight was really about the H-foot road residential area, which is what is defined by the MCP as the site. And so the information there. With respect to leachate from the landfill, it's my understanding that the landfill operations, including sampling, is handled under the DEP solid waste program. I don't know if there's anything else that you would add to that, Jeffrey?
Well, just, if I could, when the gentleman says that there's an implication that these chemicals are not all present in one place. But I suspect that if the leachate was looked at, I don't know if they looked at the leachate
Right,
to see if they were all analyzed.
So I'm going to step out of my box for a second, just because I've worked on a lot of sites throughout Massachusetts. And what I'll say is that when you have a detection of something, you start looking for those chemicals. And so there was detections in those residential homes. Again, correct me if I'm going off the farm here. And so then you start to look for where else are they detected. And ultimately, that becomes what gets referred to by the DEP as contaminants of concerns, or COCs. So that those then become the chemicals that you look for and analyze for. That information will all be in the repository. All that detection, all that monitoring information will be there. Again, a specific question about the landfill and landfill leachate, that's not really a part of this program.
Well, just the gentleman said it wasn't detected together in the landfill.
Okay, so
I was
Jeff,
asking if that was looked at.
Can you clarify when you made the point that the reason we know the landfill is not the source is because the contaminants that you see in those residential wells you do not see in the landfill?
Right, the monitoring wells are what we're sampling. We're sampling.
So you're only looking at the monitoring wells, you didn't look at the leachate itself?
We don't look at the leach. What the leachate is, and we're looking at what's happening in the environment, and that's what we base everything on. The leachate is what's characterized. I'm sorry.
Isn't the leachate in the environment?
No, it's in the landfill.
Right, so
It's
it's part of
above the line.
it's part of the leachate. And if perhaps,
All right.
if we
Well,
get really technical, I'll have you maybe respond afterwards.
No, I appreciate it. I just wanted to clarify.
Sure. But that's how the DEP and then a potentially responsible party or a designated responsible party would make a determination of what do I need to sample for, and how they get this term of contaminants of concern.
And my other question, not that, gentleman, do these people have to pay for this water? What's the pipes are there, or is that being provided by the
So the
town?
question is whether or not with the installation of the water line, who pays for the water?
Correct.
Tracy, do you want to
Yeah,
answer?
so each individual resident will be responsible for their water utility bill once the connection is made.
Other questions about the plan or comments? Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Celeste Carlson, I live in Charlton on H-Foot Road. Since the water line does go up to the top of Commercial Drive, would it be looked at that the water lines start there and not be contingent on the other line being built by Charlton
I know there's a perception the water line's already up there, but actually the water line at the top of Commercial Drive doesn't have enough pressure to service the residents on 8 Foot Road. The elevation and the pressures at the top of Commercial Drive couldn't meet the elevation requirements for the houses on 8 Foot Road. It doesn't seem like it should be a lot different, but there is actually quite a big elevation difference. It would require a subsequent pump station to be constructed, and the way that's designed right now, it wouldn't be it's not good to put a pump station on top of another pump station without an intermediate tank. It was considered for cost purposes, and it was actually more expensive and much more technically difficult to service it off of that line.
Yes, sir. And again, if you could state your name, please, and where you live.
Paul Soros from Southbridge, COTOS.
Thank you.
The questions I have, it was kind of quick what she said. The water's coming from 116.
I will clarify. I think there might have been a little confusion. So the water. All right. Currently, the water in the town of Charlton actually comes up to a storage tank right here. We call that the Mass Ave tank. That Mass Ave tank services this line that goes up, which is a one pressure system. There's a pump station here, and this line that goes out to Charlton already. There's a gravity line and a pressure line that service Charlton. There's a pump station there also.
Can you tell me the size of the pipe?
Which one?
Both.
Okay, there is a 16-inch gravity line that has been extended here.
15?
16.
60 inch?
Yes.
Okay.
16-inch gravity line. There's a 10-inch pressure line that currently services Charlton. Okay? The new pump station is going on the 16-inch line that was just extended. That's this pump station here. Then we'll reconnect into the existing 10-inch line to service pressure-wise. This intersection's already been designed to be able to bring water up here with a 8-inch connection. Okay? This line that goes up here is a 12-inch line. It's a pressure line also. It is not at as high pressure as the 10-inch line that pumps out to Charlton right now.
Thank you. Yes, sir? If you could just give your name, sorry.
John Dover, Road. Has the property already been purchased for the pump house in Charlton?
That is Charlton's responsibility, and I do not know the answer.
What was the question? The question was, has the property been purchased to install a pump station?
I know that they've been under negotiations, that's all I know.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am?
So there's time frames for this to be constructed? Or
Correct.
the whole deal is going to be off?
The
This is
ACO
the-
required a couple different things. One of them was a number of connections. I'm happy to report that right now I've been provided with 50 connections. I believe 38 were required, and there were some requirements of a minimum number of connections, and that's to promote good water flow throughout the whole system. So it was like 8 here, 8 here, 8 here, and then a couple other more put in. So that hurdle has been met. I believe the next deadline was for the purchase of this pump station. And then once that was completed, we're already starting the procedures to hire a design engineer and facilitate that. So then it will be designed. No construction will start until this is under construction, so that we know that there's going to be a pump station to pump the water there.
Okay, so there's like, if that pump station, there's no deadline, like if that pump station's not completed by January 2018.
There is no-
We're gonna stop.
There's a 90-day deadline to purchase this property. Within 90 days of signing the ACO, there is a 90-day deadline.
And
I would say that if that happens to be exceeded, we will probably go back and ask to have that extended.
So the administrative consent order was finalized at the end of April, so that will give you a time frame of the 90 days.
Thank you. Okay. Other questions or comments? Yes, sir?
What if it turns into a big dig type situation and there's overruns? Who's responsible? Are we 50/50 on the responsibility if it goes
So
over?
the question is, what's the financial responsibility if the current class with the design, the pump house, if it was to go over $10 million, I guess? Is there anyone that can answer that?
There is no, the contingencies have been put into the cost estimates at this point, and all parties concerned were very comfortable that we could cover it with the $10 million. Once the first phase of the engineering was done, we will look at those cost estimates again to make sure that we're also comfortable.
Yes, sir, if you'd state your name, please.
Excuse me, my name is Ken Rockets from Maestro Road.
Thank you.
Pardon my ignorance of the lines and for ExxonMobil, my understanding is that ExxonMobil was going to be involved in putting stuff over for the public schools over in the other side of town. How does the ExxonMobil line here have to do with the water line for H1 Berry Pond?
So in order to put the existing pump station that services Charlton, I hope everybody can talk here, isn't designed to service at a high enough capacity. It's also 20 years old, oh, maybe even older. So in order to increase the flows out here to Charlton, they were required in their conditions of their settlement to build a new pump station that would be able to flow at higher flow capacities. Does that make sense?
And that high flow was required to pump up the hill of the Berry Corner, is that what you're?
No, the existing pressure is actually up here in the center of Charlton are need higher pump station capacities than even Berry Corner.
Okay.
So it'll be sufficient.
It will be sufficient because it's already meeting.
Okay.
And it was designed with excess capacity up to 500,000 gallons a day, which was part of their settlement agreement.
And I know and we'll take a few more questions on it, but I also just want to point out that, in fact, it's the type of questions that you're asking about what happens and when will we get information. That is part of what would happen in the public involvement plan then, right? There'd be the opportunities to get updates on the water line and water line installation as SRDP and the town continue to keep the community involved. So I think it's not a one and done in terms of questions about the water line. There'll be different opportunities for you to get additional information. But this is good to get a sense of what are some of those questions as we start thinking about additional information that can be provided to you. So it's great to kind of hear the types of things that are on your mind. Sir, Mr. Jordan?
Did we get a copy of the presentation on the website?
A copy of the presentation, I believe we can probably post that. I don't see that there'd be any problem with that. And if that's a comment that you would have for other meetings like that, you can make that as a kind of a comment for the public involvement plan as well. And actually, the cable person has also taken some of that. It's my understanding, by the way, that that's on demand. So if you get home tonight and you miss something, you can go back on. When will that be on?
It'll be uploaded probably by the weekend.
Okay, so you can't go home and watch it tonight, but you'll be able, by the weekend, be able to get that on there in terms of that. Any other thoughts, especially I'd be interested in again, some of the reflections about ways to give people information or involve people. Other questions or thoughts about that? Yes, sir?
Is the overlook going to be on that water line?
I'm sorry, is the overlook?
The overlook?
That's actually an ExxonMobil question, but it is designed to, ExxonMobil is connecting Overlook.
On Exxon's line?
Yes, that's Exxon's line. Overlook's not even close to this.
No, I know. Yeah, I was up there the other day.
Yep.
They said they were getting online, and I didn't know which.
Exxon is connected.
Also, just a question, we chose to have the meeting tonight at the public library. It looked like that was a convenient location. Is this a good location for people? It's a nice room in terms of that. Okay. And again, this is kind of a more formal meeting, but there are opportunities to have other types of meetings where you might see more things like that. And you could walk around and ask kind of some of those nitty-gritty questions of the person who's most knowledgeable about it. So we found that to be really something successful and useful for people in other sites. Other questions or comments or thoughts? Again, I really would encourage you to, if you want, we still have copies of that plan here. Again, it's available electronically in a couple of different ways through the Mass DEP and also on the southbridgelandfill.com. And then there's that hard copy available on the information repository in this library as well. Any other comments on the plan or questions from tonight? Well, you've been great, and so I want to follow up with the next steps, which are to please submit your comments in writing. Again, we've got until June 28th. We'll take our notes back from tonight. We'll also get the comments that you give us in writing. And again, the plan will be finalized. We've already got some feedback to say put the maps in that were shown tonight on the presentation and this map as well. That will be part of then the final plan, as well as any responses to additional questions or comments that you have on the public involvement plan. And I want to thank you. It's always great to be in New England and see public involvement really kind of at the core of what we do. So I appreciate you all coming out tonight to be a part of that. Thank you all. Thank you for coming.